I'm currently on the phone with Ian. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Ian Churchward. I class myself as a singer-songwriter. I'm based in Torquay, Devon, in the UK. I record my songs as the legendary 10 Seconds. I would say that most of my music you would class as like English folk rock. So, yeah, that's just like a brief intro about myself.
Perfect. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. I know there is a significant time difference between us, so I appreciate you staying up a little later for me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate the chance to talk to you, to be honest.
All right. Well, let's kind of dive in a little bit. Tell me about, when you first came in contact with music, and what about it, set the vibe that it was something that you wanted to do.
Well, I guess from an early age, I was always interested in music. Mum played the piano, and Dad had a good singing voice. Mum played the piano, and Dad would sing along. I can remember my sister had a toy record player, and we used to listen to toy records of children's songs on a record player. That was good fun. I remember I grew up in the 1960s and 1970s, and in the 60s I was always conscious of the Beatles. When I was sort of in my early teens, one of my friends at school, he got me interested in rock and roll. Eddie Cochran was a big influence on me. He introduced me to Eddie Cochran. Later on, he introduced me to The Clash. When I was sort of in my late teens, that was the punk era of music, and it was quite an exciting time. I never considered that I had any musical ability or that I had a good singing voice, but I felt in my late teens that I left it too late to play an instrument, bizarrely. But I read an article about Joe Strummer, and he said that he learned to play the guitar. I think it might have been his early 20s, I'm not sure. But I thought, well, if he can do it when he was a bit older than me, I could do it. So for a birthday present, my parents bought me a Spanish guitar. My sister could play a little bit of guitar, and she showed me my first chords. And it went on from there, really. Like I say, punk rock was probably the big thing that got me motivated in wanting to play in a band. At school, quite a lot of my friends, they had their own bands. The one that was most notable to me was a band called Dash Schnitz, and they actually recorded a record which was released. There's quite an interesting article about them on the internet, actually, if you look it up, which is quite an amusing and interesting story. So that is really sort of how I, got inspired to start playing the guitar, and I found that I could write songs as well. So almost straight away I was writing songs even before I could play the guitar properly. So yeah, there you go.
All right. So that kind of leads into the question that I was kind of going to get into of when you started writing about it or started writing with your instrument, how did that process kind of go? You mentioned it came kind of naturally to you, but tell me a bit about the development process of learning the instrument and then beginning to create with it.
Well, I didn't have any music lessons. Like I say, my sister showed me some sort of basic open chords on the guitar, and then I got hold of a book that taught you how to play the guitar, so I picked up some stuff from that. The other thing, I had a couple of friends who played the guitar, and they were sort of more advanced than me, and I learnt a bit from them. I got to know a friend who was learning to play keyboards about the same time as I was learning to play guitar. So we decided to try and form a band. and we tried to, as we were learning to play our instruments, when we got together, he'd bring his keyboards over to me, or I'd go over to him with my guitar, and we would try and write songs together. So yeah, that's how it started, really.
Okay, and you mentioned that punk rock was a huge influence at the beginning as well.
It was. I think it was a bit of a kick in the teeth to the music business. It was almost like going back to the roots. I think during the mid-1970s, things like prog rock, it got a bit stagnant, and it was almost getting a bit too clever. And I think the punk rock thing was like taking it back to basics, and for me, it was quite exciting. I was also working at a part-time job in the school holidays and at weekends, working in a department store called W.H. Smith's, and they had a good record section in the store. And from the money that I was earning as that job, I got into buying records as well. So that was quite good. So yeah, there you are.
Okay, so tell me how that kind of matured. Once you kind of went through that project and then transitioned to other stuff that you worked on, what was the writing process like then? When did you kind of identify what kind of content that you wanted to create?
Well, the first song I ever wrote, I can remember the title of it, but I've lost the record of it. But the first song I wrote was after I read a science fiction story by, what was he called? Clifford Simak, I think. I'm trying to think what the novel was called, but the song was called Shadow Love, and it was about the character in the book. And I think I sort of kind of like wrote the lyrics and the melody for the song. It was almost like about this. It came as a piece. It wasn't like I got the lyrics first and I got the melody next. It sort of kind of like evolved a bit together. And although, like, I must admit, some of my early songs might not have been very good, I seem to be able to understand how you would write a song. It was almost like it didn't seem too difficult to do it. Although at that stage I found it very difficult to play other people's songs. I could make up my own. I think the reason I made up my own songs is because when I started trying to play the guitar, I wasn't very good, and it took me quite a long time to even sort of become a basic sort of like guitar player, as it were. And it also helped that the musical friends I had, they wanted to write songs as well. And I had one friend in particular he'd been writing songs longer than he started writing songs before me, so he was a bit more advanced, and I learned from him like the songwriting process.
Sure. So you mentioned that at some point you were able to start recording. Is that kind of what you've been able to focus on now? You've been starting to get recordings together with all the songs you've been writing and stuff. Tell me about that.
Right. Well, we're going back to about 1982, and I had a cassette player, and we would, record ourselves, playing. If we had a new song idea, we'd record ourselves playing it into the cassette player. So that was quite basic. I also had a friend. He had a 4-track reel-to-reel tape recorder, and we did record a demo of 3 songs that we'd written with him. So that the quality of that was much better than recording onto the small tape recorder we had. Later on, back in about later on in 1982, we recorded what we called a cassette album at an 8-track recording studio in Torquay. And we used to record a lot of demos and songs at that recording studio. So that was like in the early 1980s. later on, I was in a band called the Morrisons, and we recorded an EP at 16-track recording studio in Exeter. After that, I purchased a Porter studio. So I used to record my songs onto the Porter studio. Later on, I got a mini disc recorder. So the quality on the mini disc recorder was better than the Porter studio, which you used cassettes. So trouble with the Porter studio was that sometimes the cassettes would, the tape in the cassettes would stretch a little bit if you did too many overdubs, and make the sort of like sound a bit wonky. After the mini disc recorder, I started recording using a Mac computer, and with the Mac computer, I mean the quality I could get on the recordings just was so much better, and I've continued to record my songs using Mac and Logic software since then. And I must admit, I've been very pleased with the results.
Awesome. So that kind of leads into what I was going to ask next, which was, what is the current project that you're working on? Obviously, you're at a point where you can record them yourself. So give me some information about, the current songs and music that you're writing.
Yeah, well, the next album that's going to be released is called Wonder Songs. That's got 10 songs on it. The theme of that, most of my albums tend to be concept albums. That album isn't really a concept album. It's just got songs about anything I felt like writing about. The cover of the actual artwork of the album has actually got a science fiction theme, and that's like I think it's about it's the fourth. It's going to be the fourth one with like a science fiction themed cover. And those albums have got artwork which is like got a science fiction theme. Have got some songs on them that are basically about science fiction stories. I'm currently working on a couple of other new albums. One is going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be a concept album about Richard III, who was quite a controversial king in medieval times. I've actually recorded about 6 concept albums, all about Richard III, and a period in English history called the War of the Roses. This latest Richard III album is oh god, I'm sort of losing my track now. Sorry about this. You might have to edit this. So anyway, one of the new albums that I'm working on at the moment is sort of like a medieval themed album. I've also got another album that I'm working on, which is again, it's going to be one of those albums where it's just about various songs about anything I felt like writing about.
Okay. Real quick, in just a couple sentences, can you summarize why Richard III has been such a prominent inspiration for what you're writing?
Yeah, I've always been interested in history, and I was always particularly interested in that king. Although until I started writing songs about him, I'd never really investigated his history very deeply. But I watched a very interesting documentary back in about 2013 when a lady called Philippa Langley discovered his grave in a car park in Leicester in England. And it was just the most amazing and interesting documentary I've ever seen. And at the time, I was in the middle of writing what sound like a folky song with one of my friends, and I didn't have any we had the melody, but we didn't have any idea for lyrics. And as soon as I saw that documentary, I thought, I'll make the song is going to be about this king called Richard III. So anyway, we recorded this song, and we were very pleased with it. And then I just sort of thought, we could do a whole concept album about this king, because I'd started investigating the history about him, and it was absolute. The things around him, that period of history, it was just absolutely incredible, and just gave me so many ideas for songs. So we recorded a concept album about him, and then I just kept on getting more and more song ideas about that period of history, and we ended up doing 3 concept albums almost entirely about this medieval king called Richard III. And then we recorded 2 more albums which had like a Richard III theme, but they were, I would say, really about the period of history called the Wars of the Roses, during which he grew up.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a weird thing to randomly stumble across and then like have so much like content to create out of it. I'm very intrigued about that. All right. Well,
I tell you what, it's led me to meet so many interesting people. It's to be honest, it's what I've got out from it creatively, and the people I've sort of come into contact is absolutely incredible.
Awesome. So tell me, moving forward, so where we are now, where can people find those albums and take a listen to them and check your stuff out?
Well, it's on all the usual places like iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. They're all on Bandcamp. Some of the songs are on SoundCloud. Amazon as well. All the usual places. The music gets submitted to a company called CD Baby in the States, and they distribute it. They distribute it so that it's on all the internet platforms, as it were.
Got it. So it's out there. And then do you have like social media accounts like Instagram or Facebook or anything?
Yeah, I've got pretty much all of them. I've got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
And are they all just under your name, Ian Churchward?
No, they probably most of it's under my solo music project name, which is the legendary 10 Seconds. Yeah, I can give you an interesting story about how I got that name as well, if you want to hear it. Right. Well, basically, it's a bit of an in-joke amongst some friends, but it all started off. I used to take my tape recorder along to local band gigs, and there was a punk band playing in a music venue in Torquay, and I'd taken my tape recorder along to record them. Anyway, just before they start, I pressed record, and then the music starts, and it was like unbelievably loud, chaotic, and it was just so loud it sounded like a row. And I think the singer introduced one song. He didn't say 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he said like a swear word, and then this cacophony started. And anyway, I thought, oh, this is awful. So after about 20 seconds, I switched off the tape recorder. Anyway, the next morning, I decided to quickly listen to what I recorded, and it just sounded absolutely hilarious. And you can hear one of my friends shouting in the background, "My God, what an awful row." Anyway, this recording just made me laugh. Anyway, I took it around to one of my friends later that morning and played it to him, and he just burst out laughing. And he thought it was so funny, he made a copy of the tape. And then some of my other friends listened to it, and they copied it. And one of my friends, Dave Clifford, took a copy of the tape up with him to where he was studying university in London. He played it to his flatmate, Carl Hudson, who thought it was absolutely hilarious. And he named it the legendary 10 Seconds. And like that name always stuck in my mind. So I decided to use it as my solo music project name. So there you go.
Yeah, that's great. I like it when there's like good backstories like that to the names that people use. That's
Yeah, well,
great.
it's just that I've got the recording on a memory stick, which is um, on. It's got my memory stick's got all my favourite songs on there. So like this, I don't know, a couple of thousand songs on this memory stick that I listen to in the car, and I put it on shuffle so randomly. All the different songs come up. You don't know
Sure.
what's going to come up next, and every so often that little recording comes up, and I just burst out laughing as soon as I hear it.
Sure, sure. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's great. What would be a message that you would like to share with anybody else, whether it be music related or not, that you think other people should hear?
Oh, well, I mean, if I would be grateful if anybody listens to this interview, if you could take the opportunity to listen to my songs. I think the topics are interesting. I also like to think that I write good tunes, and I enjoy recording them, and I would hope if anybody listens to them, they'd enjoy listening to them.